keep it real with ya.
Hey guys, it's me, Meaning, back with another video. I know what you're thinking, Meaning, why are you wearing a mask? Because I want to. Anyway, this is just a little short video I want to make because I want to tell a real quick story about how white people like to tell on themselves. So I was out voting, as you also should be doing. Did I let my cats out? Hold on. I accidentally left my door open and my cats are out. Out just wreaking havoc, as they always do. Anyway, so I was out voting, and I don't usually like talking to people in public, but I was in a good mood. I was like, let me talk to some people. So who loves to talk to you? One, I'm early voting. So who's really into early voting? White people. Who's going to show up early in the morning to vote? Old white people. So I literally am like, okay, let me talk to these old white people. Because here's the thing about old white people. They love telling on themselves. They love telling on themselves. They love telling you about their experiences, what they're going through, what they believe, like all of this stuff. Let me choose a different mask. All right, so I got this mask on that says cousins make the best friends. I don't like my cousin, but my cousin gave it to me. I don't mess with them no more, but they gave it to me. But anyway, much more breathable for what I'm doing here and all this talking I'm doing. Anyway, so I'm talking to them. They put on their mask while we're standing outside. Now, I wear my mask everywhere, but I don't always wear my mask like when I'm just outside. But if I'm talking to people, I'm like, yeah, let's put a mask on. So I have my mask like on my chin. They put their mask on. I put my mask on. They started talking about how, they've been traveling everywhere and going to stuff, and people just have not been wearing their mask, and then people have still been getting COVID. And then the old white guy says that his doctor told him to not worry about COVID anymore. COVID's not an issue anymore. Whatever this new strain is, it's not deadly. It's just, you'll get a little sick and it'll be gone in 3 days and like all this stuff. I don't know the facts. So I'm just listening to him. I'm just letting him talk. I was like, oh, wow, didn't know that. COVID never went away. And I know there's been more strains and stuff like that. Very non-confrontational. Talk about going to Canada. So they're from Canada. I was like, okay, interesting. They're going to have some interesting thoughts about what's going on here. And we just have normal conversations, right? We talk about being old and, they're like helping the older people who are trying to vote with their canes and stuff, helping them get in. Conversation's going real normal. We get inside and there's an old white lady who's working there at the voting place. She's not wearing her mask. Like, she has the mask. She literally pulls it down so she could lean in close and talk to people. Okay, so they're talking. I get separated from the old white lady. So I hear their conversation because, of course, like, we're all bunched in here together. And the other old white lady that works here is telling the old white lady that I was talking to about how she's anti-pronouns. And she doesn't believe in teaching kids pronouns when they're like 4 years old, teaching them pronouns, So they stopped talking. The lady comes over to me and I was like, wow, you're having a real controversial conversation over there. Like, what's going on? And she was like, oh, no, you didn't hear that, did you? And I was like, yeah, I heard that. Come on. I got time today. Tell me what it is. Like, we literally have time. We are in the line to vote. We have time. Tell me about it. And so this lady literally tells me about, how basically she believes that all little girls want to be boys when they're little because to be a boy is cool. And I was like, I don't think that's how that works. And she was like, well, they just never talked about this stuff when I was young. This is old white lady when I was young, but I was a tomboy when I was a kid. I bet if someone told me that, do you want to be a boy? I would have said yes. And I was like, and I was like, well, I grew up with, she was like, she had all these brothers and she wanted to like hang out with them. And I was like, yeah, I'm still kind of a tomboy, but I was like, I was more of a tomboy when I was a kid, and I, hung out with guys, and I had brothers, and I liked hanging out with them and stuff like that. And she's like, well, I bet if they had asked you if you wanted to be a boy, you would have said yes. And I was like, no, that's not how that works. And she was like, what? No, you would have definitely wanted to be. No, I understood gender when I was little, and my family understood gender very much. And I was like explaining to this lady how how my family was big on gender and stuff, and how they would talk about, you know, what girls do, what boys do. Girls can't do this because boys do that, and all of that stuff. And she thought that I was talking about the progressive parents who are forcing gender roles onto kids and trying to like convince kids that they're transgender. And I'm like, no, ma'am, my family is Baptist Christian. They were enforcing gender roles because they believed in strict gender roles. They were not trying to convince me that I was a boy. They were trying to convince me that I was a girl. And as a girl, I should not even want to do what the boys were doing. You know what I mean? And so I was telling her, she was like, oh, wow. Yeah, I was like, yeah. And then we ended up in a conversation about sexuality. And she was talking about how she didn't know any gay people. And one of her friends who was like working at a college was like, you know gay people. And she was like, no, I don't. And she was like, yes, you do. And I was like, ma'am, you know gay people. There's enough gay people in the world that you know a gay person. And then she thought that it was a good thing that she didn't know any of her friends or the people in her circle that were gay. She was like, because I never talk about it. Like that was a thing to be proud of. And I'm sitting here like, ever occurred to you that you didn't know they were gay because they didn't feel comfortable talking about it with you? She's like, no, I could talk about everything with everybody. I have friends who are on a complete opposite side of the spectrum with me when it comes to politics, and I have black friends, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, okay, interesting. Keep talking. And as she keeps talking, even though she was there to vote Democrat and she was going to vote all the Democrat people, she starts revealing like her issues, you know, how she feels about races. Now, she didn't want to talk about black people because, of course, but she did end up telling me about how she felt about Mexicans because she's a Canadian immigrant. And as a Canadian immigrant, she immigrated really, really easily, like 20 years ago. And so she's very judgy of all the Mexican people who are just walking across the border. They just walk across the border. You know what I mean? That's how she pictured. She was like, literally like, they just walk across the border and now they get to vote and be citizens and blah, blah, blah. And they're not all good people. And I was like, is every Canadian immigrant a good person? Like, and then I was like, I mean, Italians immigrated here, and she tried to make it seem like, yeah, and they weren't treated well either. I'm like, yeah, and there was also like Italian mobs. Like the Irish weren't treated well, and they also committed like genocide against black people in certain cities, you know, in like the 1800s. And I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just, people immigrate here for whatever reason. I was like, ma'am, you do realize that there are literally cartels at the border that are like trafficking humans, and not the people who are trying to cross the border, who are risking their lives, are running from them. Like, they're trying not to die. It's a more difficult situation than a Canadian who just decides that they want to go to America. And then she was like, well, name one country in the world that has open borders. I was like, look, I'm not a world historian, okay? That's not what I'm here to talk about, okay? But there are issues in Europe. They even have issues where they don't like the people who are immigrating over, but those people have no choice. She's like, well, those are refugees. Those are different. And I'm like, again, people are fleeing to America to escape what could literally be certain death for them. Tell me how it's different. Like, there's people who are literally being displaced over the things that are going on in the country. And she just was not trying to hear me. I was like, okay. You know, and I was being very subtle about it. I am not here to argue. I am not here to fight. I'm not here to call nobody names. I just am the type of person who white people get very comfortable with me. So I let them talk their shit. I let them get comfortable with me. And I let them say all the things that they want to say. Because then I know who they really are. You know, if you present yourself as someone who's just ready to argue with people, they're never going to tell you what they're really thinking. And you're going to end up being like some of my friends who have been friends with white people who are super racist, but they don't know that person is super racist because they never talk about race with them. I let white people say whatever the fuck they gonna say. And so like we're having these conversations, talking about how, you know, I have family who had to immigrate here from Mexico. I talked about my friend in Mexico who hates America, doesn't want to come here. And she was like, what? They love America. What are you talking about? I was like, nah, she said that we're super racist over here. And we treat Mexicans poorly whenever they try to come over here. So she don't want to come over here. She's like, oh. And I was like, yeah. Yeah, they have news and media too. They see what's going on. Maybe not all of them see it, but some of them definitely know what's going on over here. And so I was just dropping these little nuggets because obviously, like, I'm not a master debater. I'm not a debate person. I don't do debates or anything like that. But, you know, every now and then I throw in a little like, well, what you don't know is stuff like that. I also talked about things like the mass shootings, and she was like, oh yeah, it must be so dangerous. It's so dangerous for these kids. They must be scared to go to school. I was like, yeah, I was scared to go to college, you know? And she was like, ha ha ha, you're so funny. And I'm like, there were mass shootings at colleges too. It didn't just happen at elementary schools. And she was looking like, and I was like, during the time when Trump was running for president, there were literally people at my campus who were writing manifestos and talking about their guns and how they would like to cleanse the filth from our campus. It was scary for me too, ma'am. Not saying that it's not scary for kids. One of the things that I was trying to point out, because white people love doing this, right? They love to pick an issue and then act like that's the biggest issue. Or they love to use the whole, but there's so much other stuff going on. Why are you guys worried about gender and sexuality? That's what she says. She's just worried about gender and who's gay and who's not. Like, that's such a small percentage of the population when there's all this other stuff that's going on. And I'm like, yeah, but there's a lot of stuff going on all the time, and it's all important. None of it is less important because of what's going on. Like, the struggles of someone going to college and being concerned about mass shootings at colleges does not somehow negate the feelings of a 16-year-old going to high school and also being concerned about a mass shooting. It's all important, you know? And so when you think about, oh my God, my ears look so pointy with this mask on. Anyway, so to try to make it seem like we shouldn't be talking about issues for gay people or trans people because there's mass shootings, I'm like, I think we can be worried about both. And she was talking about the importance of voting and everything. And again, like, I also talk about the importance of voting. I was also there to vote, do my part, and shaking shit up a little bit at the ballots, because there are still billboards in my city with Trump's face on it talking about how much we love President Trump. This nigga was just here like a couple months ago. Or like, no, he was just here last month. I'm like, oh God, it's awful. I have to do my part to vote, because these old white people, they'll act like they your friend. They'll act like they cool with you. They'll talk to you. They got bad ideas. And not all of their ideas are bad. Like, I'm still a big person about, like, you know, I still like wearing my mask. Like, literally, I'm wearing my mask. I still like wearing masks when I go places. I don't care that nobody else is wearing a mask. I still like wearing masks when I go places. I wish more people would. But I can only control what I do for myself. So they had some ideas. And these are people who would probably call themselves centrists, because they'll be like, oh, I could talk to people on any side. I could talk to the far left, the far right. But then when we start talking about media and watching the news you consume and the type of commentary that comes with the news and like who owns the media and stuff, some of the stuff that they were saying, I was like, I wonder where you got those ideas from. Now, don't get me wrong. You do have to look at who owns whatever media outlet, but you also got to be smart enough to understand, if you're watching something, look at what they're saying and like look at the type of biases they have. You can literally do research into the type of biases of different media outlets. And then you can choose who you want to get your media from. You could choose to watch media with no commentary whatsoever. That's up to you. Like, literally, you can go on YouTube and watch just the actual thing with nothing coming across the screen. It's not cutting away to any commentary. It's literally just what's happening news-wise. But does everybody do that? Hell no. No. Lots of people love commentary. They love the echo chamber. They love for people to tell them what they want to hear. But it was just really, really interesting and funny. I know that for other people, it might be very difficult for them to have these type of discussions. And I'm in no way advocating for you to have discussions with people if it's going to upset you, if it's going to stress you, if it's going to affect your mental health or anything like that. I just like occasionally talking to white people and listening to their nonsense opinions. Like, this woman is so convinced that every little girl wants to be a boy because boys look cool. So if you talk about gender to kids, they're all just going to say that they're trans. And I'm just sitting here like, interesting. Like, even her as an old white woman to say stuff like, oh, it's, we never talked about that stuff growing up. And I'm like, wasn't there like whole movements in like the 70s and 80s and all that stuff? And she's like, well, yeah, but by then I was already an adult. And I'm sitting there like, what about the 60s? Even in the 50s, there were, movements. It was more white. But even in the 50s, there were movements for gay people. They were calling themselves homophiles. So to pretend like just no one was talking about gender until the 80s and 90s is just not true. To pretend nobody was talking about sexuality is just not true. So I like to talk to these people and to kind of like burst their bubble a little bit with some little historical knowledge. Now, is that going to change their mind? Probably not. But I just like listening to people, hearing their wild ideas. I'm not going to fight with nobody. Like, if I feel like you about to stress me out, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to expose myself in any way. I'm not going to talk about my sexuality or anything that could lead to them attacking me as a person, because that can get real dicey. Because who knows how long we're going to be here waiting to vote. It was like 15 pages of shit I had to vote on because of all the seats being up for re-election. So I kept it distant enough so that I could like keep control of myself and my like mental health and like keep the pulse of like how I'm feeling. But also, just throw a little bit in there. Since you're open to listening, let me throw in some stuff, Let me tell you about how the immigration process worked a few years ago when my Latin American Mexican stepmother got married and wanted to get citizenship. Let me tell you how many years it took. It took you 6 months in 2001 to come to America from Canada. Let's talk about how many years it takes Latin immigrants to get citizenship in America when they're literally running for their lives. Like, I like to just throw that stuff out there with people. Anyway, I've been talking too long. I got to get on to do something else. I'm super busy today and I'm tired, but I got to keep moving. But I just want to tell you guys that because talking to white people can be funny sometimes because they just be running their mouth. And if you let them run their mouth, you're going to learn a lot of things about why people think the way they do and where they're getting their information and what they believe and all of that good stuff. If you're somebody who's ever wanted to have a discussion with white people and you're worried about how it could go, don't make it personal. Don't make it about where I'm trans. Don't make it about where I'm gay, because that's going to go south. Just be like, oh, what do you think about that? Oh, you think those people are sinners, huh? Be very neutral. Because if they think that you're going to get upset, they're going to clam up. They're not going to say anything. Or they're going to lie. They're going to lie and be like, oh, no, I love gay people. No, you don't. I love black people. No, you don't. No, you don't. Like, as eager as she was to talk about all these other races, she got shit to say about my race as well. Like, I'm not even going to, like, delude myself into thinking I found a non-racist white person. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But, yeah, I'm going to let you guys go. As I always say, take care of yourself because you deserve it. Drink your water, eat food, any food. I've been eating a lot of gluten-free foods and I feel great. Take your naps. I've, been trying to take my naps. And just be kind to yourself. Give yourself grace. Like I said, you deserve it. I love you guys. I'm going to see you in next week's video. Bye.